What if the biggest flaw in every post-apocalyptic movie is the one thing nobody talks about? Two people survive, a man and a woman. They meet in an empty world. They fall in love. They have children. Humanity is saved. Sounds simple, but there's one terrifying problem. It probably wouldn't work. And once you understand why, you'll never watch those survival stories the same way again. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every human on Earth is gone except two people. No governments, no cities, no crowds, just silence. At first, survival seems like the challenge. Finding food, finding shelter, avoiding danger. But here's the strange part. None of those problems would be the real threat. The real threat would arrive years later, hidden inside the DNA of every child born after the apocalypse. The plan seems obvious. Have as many children as possible. Build a new generation. Restart civilization. But that creates a shocking problem. Every child would be a brother or sister. And if humanity wants to continue, those brothers and sisters would eventually need to have children of their own. That's when things start getting dangerous. Every human carries hidden genetic mutations. Most people never notice because they only carry one copy. But if a child inherits two identical harmful copies, the results can be devastating. Diseases, birth defects, developmental disorders. And this is where it gets weird. The closer two people are related, the higher the chance those dangerous genes collide, which means the very thing needed to save humanity could slowly destroy it. The first generation might survive, maybe even the second. But what happens when this cycle continues for decades or centuries? That's where the story takes a much darker turn. To understand what happens next, we don't need science fiction. We only need history. Because humanity has already run this experiment before, not with two survivors, but with some of the most powerful families on Earth. For centuries, European royal families married within their own bloodlines. The goal seemed logical. Keep power inside the family. Protect wealth. Preserve dynasties. But the consequences were catastrophic. Generation after generation, the gene pool became smaller. The same DNA kept circulating. The same hidden mutations kept returning. And eventually, those mutations started winning. The most famous example was Charles II of Spain. His family tree was so tangled that geneticists later discovered something unbelievable. His genetic diversity was lower than what would normally be expected from the child of siblings. Think about that. Hundreds of years of royal marriages created genetic consequences so severe that his body struggled to function normally. He suffered from physical disabilities, mental challenges, serious health problems, and he couldn't produce an heir. The very dynasty his family spent centuries trying to protect ended because of the strategy designed to preserve it. But that's not even the craziest part. Even if our post-apocalyptic survivors somehow avoided extreme inbreeding, another invisible threat would emerge. It's called the founder effect, and it changes everything. When a population begins with only a handful of people, every future generation inherits a tiny collection of genetic possibilities. Rare mutations that would normally disappear can suddenly become common. Dangerous traits spread faster. Genetic diversity shrinks. And with no modern hospitals, no advanced medicine, and no genetic screening, even a small problem could become a civilization-ending disaster. So if two people aren't enough, what about 10 or 50? Would that finally save humanity? The answer is far more surprising than most people realize. Here's the twist nobody expects. History suggests humanity might not be completely doomed after all. While genetics creates enormous obstacles, small groups of survivors have occasionally managed to recover and grow against overwhelming odds. Not easily, not quickly, but successfully. And that changes the entire conversation. Because now the question isn't simply whether humanity survives. It's what kind of humanity survives. Imagine a world rebuilt from a tiny handful of people. Every language spoken today could disappear. Every border could vanish. Every culture could eventually blend into something entirely new. What happens next changes everything. Instead of thousands of nations, there might be one. Instead of countless languages, there might be a single global language. Instead of competing governments, a completely new system could emerge. The descendants of the survivors wouldn't remember our world. They would only know the stories, the legends, the warnings. And over hundreds of years, those stories could become myths. The apocalypse itself might transform into a mysterious origin tale told around future campfires. But here's the strangest possibility of all. The greatest challenge wouldn't be rebuilding cities, or restoring technology, or even surviving nature. It would be preserving enough genetic diversity to keep the species alive long enough to create a future. Because civilization can be rebuilt, knowledge can be rediscovered, technology can be reinvented. But once genetic diversity is lost, recovering it becomes incredibly difficult. So the next time a movie claims two survivors can save humanity, remember this. The real battle wouldn't begin when everyone disappears. The real battle would begin when the first child is born. And if humanity somehow survived that challenge, what kind of civilization would eventually rise from the ashes? And would we even recognize it as human anymore?